Hello and welcome to your Mad to Glad Parenting Tip of the Week. Today we have guest expert Lori Dupar, who is an ADHD coach, and I'll tell you a little bit about her background in a second. First, I just want to say, hey Lori.
Hi, how you doing, Samantha?
Good, good. How about yourself?
I'm doing really well, thanks.
Yes, you're welcome. Well, it's great to have you here. And as you know, I specialize in working with families that have intense brain children. So what that means is the kids lack self-control, they're impulsive, oftentimes defiant and disrespectful. And so while I work with parents on the family dynamics and how they can get their kids to listen and have better self-control, there's a topic that comes up over and over, which is difficulties with homework. So we're going to talk about that today. And let me just give a little bit of your background information because I know that you are a high-class expert. It's one of the reasons I love collaborating with you. Now, Lori is trained as a psychiatric nurse practitioner and a 12-year veteran ADHD coach. I know that your company, Coaching for ADHD, focuses on mentoring and training emerging ADHD coaches who want to work with clients to help them minimize their ADHD challenges and get things done. Now, I know that you're a trainer, you're a professionally certified coach, and you're highly sought after on the speaking circuits, both on coaching and ADHD at worldwide conferences. The books that you have come up with, I know you're the co-author and editor of the #1 best-selling Amazon series, the ADHD Awareness Book Project, including Wacky Ways to Succeed with ADHD, and you are the author of the popular book Brain Surfing and 31 Other Awesome Qualities of ADHD. So I know that in addition to your private coaching practice, you're a fierce advocate for people with ADHD, and you sit on several ADHD organization boards. So when it comes to ADHD and what we're going to get into with homework today, you know what you're talking about.
I hope so. Yeah, I hope so. When
Yes, I know.
you say it like that, Samantha, I'm like, man, yeah, I bet yeah, I hope so.
Yes, definitely. Well, I know that you've helped some of my families out, and so why don't you share a little bit about how you got into doing the work that you're doing?
Yeah. Well, most people don't intend to be an ADHD coach, right? And my path is similar to a lot of people who have found either coaching or ADHD coaching, which basically I had a son who was diagnosed about, 15 years ago now, maybe more. And I was the mental health professional. I was the expert. I was the nurse practitioner. I was supposed to know the answers and how to help him, and I didn't. And I started to look for answers. I started to ask around. And it was really through that process of being open to possibilities and answers that I actually stumbled across someone who was an ADHD coach. And it was through her that I found coaching, and I found ADHD coaching. And I realized that through this particular approach, I could really honor my son's gifts and talents because he was such an amazing young man, and also help him in a positive way manage some of the struggles he had. And after I guess you could say sort of my son was the guinea pig, I started talking with other moms and realized how much they struggled with it and other parents. And one thing led to the other. And here I am 13 years later, totally loving what I get to do and working with people with ADHD and helping them make the difference they want in their lives.
And I know there are so many moms out there with a similar story. Everybody who comes to see me, they're smart, they're intelligent, they're intentional. Of
Yeah.
course, you love your child and you want to help them succeed. But what I find the missing piece is how do you actually draw out their gifts? So let's talk about homework time specifically. And what are some of the problems that you find occur over and over again that you solve?
Well, I don't have to think very far, right? Like I said, my son was a whole test case in and of himself. A lot of things, what I find with a lot of parents, the challenges that they have with homework is I mean, there's multiple ones, and I'm thinking it's very common. A lot of students just don't get the point of homework, honestly. It is a waste of time for them. They will oftentimes argue, or at least use the logical argument that I've spent the whole day in school. Why do I need to be doing this at home, right? Why do I have to do more work at home? So oftentimes they find it sort of a waste of time. The other is that they have a lot of trouble just settling down to do the homework. That's very difficult for a lot of students. They may spend a lot of time trying to get started. They may get up, they may get down, they don't have their supplies. They forgot what homework they did, or they forgot to write the homework down in a planner or in a way that they could remember what it is. Sometimes they may have written down what the homework is, but because they weren't necessarily being able to take in the information that was offered in the classroom, have no idea how to finish it, right? Another really common challenge is if they do sit down and get started, and they may even appear that they're, nothing else is distracting them, for instance, they can take literally 2 to 3, 4 times as long as it might take somebody else to do the same homework. And these kids are not, oftentimes because of that, they're not enjoying some of the other parts of being a student. They're not able to participate or enjoy extracurriculars. They're not going out and being with friends. It's really all about homework. Some of these students also, they may stay up really late at night trying to get the homework done, trying to get themselves started, maybe. So those, I think, as I'm thinking about it, I may think of some other ones, Samantha, but those are probably, no, I'm thinking about more. They may even do the homework, spend hours doing the homework, working on it on the weekends, and forget to turn it in. Huge challenge for parents and huge frustrations. And I remember my own son when he was younger, working on this project, pouring his heart into it. He loved doing it. It was a creative project of some sort. And I was so excited for him because I could just see the enjoyment he had. And when he got out of school the next day, when he was to turn it in, I said, "So how'd it go?" And he said, he looked at me with these big blue eyes, like, "I forgot to turn it in." That's so cool. Yeah, I forgot to turn it in. So it's so common for these kids to just and sometimes as parents, I joke with the parents and say, literally you want to walk your child in there and help them put it in that particular basket that the teacher wants it in, because you know that they've done the homework, but oftentimes they don't get credit for it because they haven't turned it in. And then what is that it really severely affects their grade. So again, because of not getting the homework in, they've done it, they just forgot to turn it in.
Right, which of course is going to impact motivation and desire to do their best and their self-esteem.
Right, yes.
Right.
Very frustrating for these students because at some point they've described to me that it feels like I'm hitting my head against the wall, because they truly, truly are motivated. They have full intentions of doing it. It's not that they haven't done it, but they're not getting credit for the work that they've done. And they just really start to feel, like you said, feel very bad about themselves. What's wrong with me? Why can't I do this? They start to lose confidence, self-esteem. They just start to feel, why even try?
Right, absolutely. And so I know that you're an ADHD specialist, and I just want to use some common language here that you and I have used before to draw it back to the brain and what's going on that becomes such a big obstacle, and why there can be this whole list of difficulties when it comes to homework. The language that I use is that there's a fire in the brain, which means that kids who are impulsive, have a hard time focusing, their fight or flight stress system is over-responsive. And so when that stress chemical is in the brain, it makes it hard to access upstairs brain skills like problem solving, focusing, paying attention. Now, I know that you talk about executive functioning, and you talk about the chemicals in the brain using your own language. And one of the things that I would love for you to comment on is, why do kids explode, and talk about chemically what's going on and how that sometimes can help kids focus, because I was fascinated to hear that the other day.
Yeah. Well, great. Thank you for reminding me about that, Samantha. The kids, when they're sitting down and trying to do this homework, again, because they know it's important, they want to get it done, they want to please their parents, they want to go to school the next day with the homework. They don't want to be embarrassed by their friends or the only one that haven't, got their homework in. So they're very, very motivated, and they sit down to do the homework, or they try to do it, and they truly are overwhelmed. Like you said, the language that I use when it comes to ADHD is that we know that because of certain neurochemicals, specifically the dopamine, the executive function, which performs the ability to sit down and to hold your attention on something that is perhaps less interesting, and homework naturally falls in that category, right? Or it has the ability to filter out some of this, some of the overwhelm, put some things in the background rather than the foreground. They're not able to sort that out. They're also having a challenge of trying to figure out with the homework, where do I start? Prioritization is a big function of the executive function. So they have all of this not going on when they have ADHD, and so they become overwhelmed. And what happens with these particular students or people that have ADHD is that they, with this overwhelm, one of two things tends to happen is they tend to explode when, meaning they just sort of lash out. They could even yell, they could even hit, they could even kick. When a parent is trying to remind them, please sit down and do your homework, do your homework, do your homework. What do you need? Do your homework. Oh my gosh, just do your homework, right? All that. The child is getting overwhelmed by this.
And so, Lori, and one of the things, so you're talking about the reminding aspect of do your homework, but isn't that external stimulation of a parent even true when it's coming from a really positive place? When it's like, hey, I'm here to help you with your homework. I'm sitting here with you to do your homework.
Yes, absolutely, right. And this can be done with and I sort of said it in a negative fashion because I know some parents, they're like, I don't want to get there, but I'm so frustrated. I just want to have my child get their homework. But absolutely, even with the best intentions, if we're sitting there as parents, even positively trying to reinforce our child to do the homework, and they're struggling with this, they're already getting overwhelmed. They don't know where to start. They have a hard time putting their attention on it. They may even sort of go, I don't know why I'm doing this homework because I never seem to remember to turn it in. All of this stuff going on, in order to sort of stop that sort of swirling in their brain, they actually they explode. So like I said, they get angry, they may shout, they may kick, they may hit. And what happens when that occurs, sort of like you're firing the brain, is it actually releases adrenaline into the body. And whenever adrenaline is released, dopamine soon follows. So what the parents see is their child sort of always having to go to this sort of exploding point before they actually can sit down and actually do the homework. And the reason is they're able to do it after this sort of unfortunate dynamic occurs, because the kids seem to be fine, interestingly enough, after this explosion. And the parents are sort of like quaking in the corner because they're like, oh my gosh, it happened again. But again, physiologically, what happens is with this overwhelm and this explosion is that the kids have that adrenaline rush, and then dopamine follows. And so now they're able to access, at least partially, that executive function and sit down and do some of this. The other thing that tends to happen in order to sort of stop this overwhelm is that kids oftentimes implode. Those are the kids, and this was my son, unfortunately. It's very difficult when they're, especially perhaps even in junior high. I don't know that it happened in high school for him, but here's a young boy really, really concerned about peers, wanting to, recognizing that he's growing up. But his overwhelm was expressed through this implosion, which basically meant he sort of hunkered down on his desk or hunkered down, almost like he was closing in on himself, and became very emotional and crying, really feeling like, gosh, I can't do this. I don't know what's wrong with me. I'm trying really hard, but in his case, that it was that emotional overwhelm was expressed sort of in that imploded way. And that probably is going to resonate with some parents as well. But it tends to be one or the other that kids have. Unfortunately, what happens with the kids that explode is that we start to think of them as behavior problems, right? They get all these labels about being a behavior problem, because this can also happen at school for them, right? Where they explode. They may be frustrated, and so they may, kick I had one student who kicked someone else's, just, like in frustration, just kicked the backpack of him, and was then sent to the office for, using somebody else's property, that sort of a thing. And then if they implode, right, and they're crying, that's so embarrassing for some of these kids as they start to get older. And the problem is that it doesn't, and again, then they start to get that adrenaline rush, and they may be able to sort of sit down and do the homework, but at what cost, honestly, right? At what cost these
Right.
or have just started, they just lack this confidence. They don't have any sense that their self-worth is going down. They don't understand why this is happening to them. There's definitely a feeling of something must be wrong with me. And what they're really trying to do is trying to sort of calibrate, I guess, what's going on in their brain so they can actually do the homework.
Right.
Yeah.
And I know that stress, the experiences of stress accumulate to the
Yes.
point where a child, they could be as young as 9 years old and they've already given up on homework.
Yeah, they actually can't. Even younger, Samantha, I've worked with students who are even younger than that, who you can already see this sense of what's wrong with me. And you're right,
Right.
about 9 or 10, and definitely by the teenagers, if this is continued, what happens with these students is they truly give up. They start to say, what's the point?
Mhm.
And that's just that's just sad to see the students give up.
Right. Absolutely it is. So what is a parent to do?
What is a parent to do? So there's several things that I have found working with my clients that can help with this. I mean, one is to recognize the overwhelm, right, that is
Yeah.
happening for these students. Is to just sort of recognize that that's a piece of it, to perhaps understand it from that perspective. That even though you may be positively reinforcing the situation for your student, that for them, especially with these hypersensitive kids, right, that may feel honestly like a barrage to them. So I think for a lot of parents, it is approach I take a lot of times, Samantha, is I actually ask the student what they need. What do they need in order to help them get started on their homework, to be able to stay with their homework? Oftentimes what I find is that as parents, we are trying to apply a lot of techniques or strategies that are told to us, but we don't often go to our student and say, hey, because they seem like they don't know what to do. But honestly, I find I get the most information about what really works if I go to the student and ask them. So when you're trying to sit down and get started, Johnny, what is it that is helpful for you in order to do that, right?
Yes.
What is it that I can do as a parent to help you get that done, or to help you get started? So really talking to the student, because they're going to, 9 times out of 10, they are going to be able to tell you exactly what isn't working and give you some insight into what to try next.
Well, I'm glad that you said that about 9 times out of 10 a student can give insight, because I can picture some parents saying, I don't know if asking my child is going to result in anything because it's such a touchy situation as it is. So what
Mm-hmm.
happens when a child says, when you get that I've given up attitude, and they just say, I don't know, nothing works?
Yeah, I have I love the I don't knows. And honestly, sometimes this can't come from a parent. It's why, and I'm not trying to plug myself here, honestly, Samantha, but it's why it coming from somebody else can be so helpful. Kids need parents. They need their parents. Parents have a very particular role, but sometimes when we've had this relationship with our kids and really talking to them about, or what they might perceive as that homework, or conversations about homework with them are perceived as being unenjoyable, it can be hard to sort of switch that around to a place where they're starting to say, oh, okay, maybe actually this could help. But even still, one of the things that I would probably say to my student is, hey, you know what? I'd admit it, acknowledge it. This isn't, I know this hasn't been working for us. I'm really trying now to set up a new pattern for us. And I really want to know from you, just tell me what's not working about it. Even start from there, or say, what would you like to try that's different, and start from that place. When a student says, I don't know, typically that's the response that students or kids have realized is, well, again, stop that conversation, stop that input. So it's sort of that knee-jerk response that they give, because when they say, I don't know, we sort of go away and go, oh, okay, well, I guess they don't know the answer. So if
Mhm.
your child says that, and you also prefaced it with this, I really want to try things differently and I need your input in this, and they still say, I don't know, I always like to ask my students, guess, just take a guess. Um, and oftentimes there's a lot of truth in that guess, right? And when we ask a child to guess versus say, this is what I need, it allows them to not sort of set themselves up for failure with it. It allows them to say, well, this might work. So, or they might have heard this works for another student. But do you see how that sort of takes that I don't want to say accountability away from them. It allows them to sort of play with what might work in a way that doesn't
Right.
set them up for failure. And also in that, Samantha, remember, and also the parents remember that there is that element of truth. Highly likely that is actually what probably is going to help with your student. And then you might ask them, well, gosh, what would it be like if we tried that? How would you like to set that up for you? Um,
Right.
yeah. Sometimes
And I
parents.
can
Oh, go
Mhm,
ahead.
go ahead.
I was going to
So
say.
I was You go ahead. You're my guest, please.
No, I think oftentimes parents, we, in our effort to do the right thing, like I said, we may take a lot of what I call sort of myths or misconceptions about homework are perhaps sitting a student in a very quiet place and expecting them to do homework there. So the place, I call it a study style. The place that they do their homework is so important. And so sort of theoretically, it makes sense that the room is quiet. There's nothing in the room with their homework. But sort of laughingly, I've had more students tell me, you know what? You have no idea how interesting a pencil and a piece of paper can be when there's nothing else to do. In fact, a lot of these students, they truly benefit from a different environment, an environment, in fact, where it may be in the kitchen where there's other activity going on, or they see their siblings doing their homework, and just that sort of occupies this part of their mind that likes to sort of have that background going, but also reminds them when they look up, oh, yeah, we're doing homework. And it doesn't make sense to parents. But again, when we ask our students, so where might be the best place for you to study, they oftentimes are going to give amazing responses. Another favorite place for students, perhaps when they're not doing homework, when we ask them, which can be surprising, is a lot of students like to do them in a favorite, like sort of lounge chair or rocking chair, one where they can actually move. In the chair is
Mm.
another favorite spot I find that's surprising to parents. Another technique that can be really helpful, again, doesn't make sense to us as parents because we think, gosh, they're already distracted, but is actually having some type of noise. AKA maybe music or something in the background. And that is, it has to be the type of music or noise in the background where it is background. It's not something that the student is actually trying to pay attention to or trying to listen, or it might be music, songs that they already know. But again, ask them, if you could listen to music, what would that be like? Because it probably is not going to be the Beethoven or Mozart that's recommended in a lot of the education studies. Some students, and it's very preferential, which is sort of interesting. I have students who say, I love to listen to music, but it can't have any words to it. I have adults who listen to music to get paperwork done, and it's this hard rock music. I have no idea how they do it. Now, I have had those occasional students that said, oh, yeah, I want to turn the TV on to Friends. And I'm like, nah, that's not going to work, right? We know our kids, when they're trying to get away with something. But ask them, so what would that be like? And what kind of music would it be that you would like to listen to? And like I said, sort of the key with that is that the student gets to choose it, and it has to be something that they're not trying to learn, right? It's like songs they always listen to. Or like I said, a TV or a radio playing softly in the background can be really helpful and just doesn't make sense to parents, but it seems to work.
Great. And I think that those nuggets of wisdom are such great advice. Even as I'm thinking about it, I can see the truth in all of these. And there's a couple of things that I wanted to say based on what you mentioned, which is, when parents talk to their kids about what would be a better solution, the importance of how they show up in that conversation is really key. So I love how you said, you have to say, I know this hasn't been working. You have to acknowledge the emotion and the stress and the fear, involved both for the parents in letting go of control and having all the answers, as well as letting go of the assumption or the judgment that the child isn't going to know how to respond. So I love that perspective of curiosity. And then as far as strategies go, I really enjoyed hearing what you shared today, and I know you've helped me personally with my learning style, which is very tactile. So I understand that I cannot do things on a computer. I have to do things with paper and pen as a tactile learner. And so I share that to demonstrate your wisdom and how much it's helped me, how much it's helped students who struggle with homework. And I'm wondering, how does somebody know that they would benefit from your coaching compared to tutoring?
Well, coaching is very different than tutoring. Tutoring tends to focus on I don't want to say maximizing, but learning a particular type of, learning a topic or mastering a topic, right? So it might be tutoring on math, how to do math, how to do a particular type of math, algebra problems, multiplications, how to learn them. If it's English, how to write a particular type of requirement, essay, story, whatever it is. With coaching, how coaching differs than the tutoring is that I actually work with the student or the individual, because I work with older students as well, college age and above, is how their brain works so that they can learn how my brain works so I can apply that to math, or I can apply that to any class I walk into or any course I take. So it's really how they learn, what sorts of strategies or tools or tips work uniquely for them across the board, not just on one particular topic. From that, students will definitely learn, will be able to more easily perhaps do their math or their English, but it's not teaching them it's not teaching them the subject, it's teaching them how they learn, how they best remember, how they best pay attention to things, that they can apply. It's a lifelong skill, how they can apply that.
Right. And, I see the validity in that a child or a student needs to understand how they learn. And that's why it's really valuable that you work with both students and their parents if they're young students. Because the struggle, a lot of it is because parents don't know how their kids learn either. Nobody in this situation knows how the child learns best. And so I really appreciate you sharing some of your advice today. And what is the best way for people to get in touch with you?
They can actually go to my website, which is coachingforadhd.com. And there is actually a download of that book that you mentioned that they can actually download for themselves as an ebook, The Brain Surfing and 31 Other Awesome Qualities of ADHD. They're welcome to download that. But yeah, just feel free to go to my website at coachingforadhd.com.
Lovely. Well, Lori, I so appreciate you taking the time to be here. I will make sure to put your website address into the email below, or what is it, the blog, on the blog page below this so that people can get in touch with you. And as I like to say to all parents, what you do matters. So, it's so important to carve out time to be intentional and to get to the root of what's really going on so that you can experience more happiness and peace at home. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom. I really appreciate you being here today.
Thanks for having me, Samantha. It's lots of fun.
Definitely. I'll talk to you later, Lori. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.